so Spider-Man. This was a show. No, from what I understand, CBS, which Columbia was the feeder for CBS, correct? Were they the ones that produced all the shows for? Or how did that work? How did all that work with television? Did every studio make shows and then just channels bid on them, or what was that about?
Yeah, usually that was the case. Is that each different studio would make their own programs and then they would shop them to the networks. And so Universal, Warner Brothers, Columbia, and independent studios would all shop these around. So there was no not like it is today where, because nowadays the networks are owned by the major studios. So they want to show their shows on their network to kind of maximize profits.
That's why Star Wars is always on ESPN, because it's a Disney thing. Right.
Star Wars on ESPN?
Always. They always are playing the Imperial March. They license it to the colleges.
Okay.
They have Chewbacca at the NBA game, and they go, "Oh, Chewbacca's here. Well, don't forget to go see Last Rise of Skywalker, Jedi." Right? I was going to say, though, about Spider-Man, from what I heard from Kenny Johnson, I listened to a lot of interviews with Kenny Johnson, who is the producer of The Incredible Hulk show, and he talked about how Columbia was able to buy, I think it was about 7 or 8 properties from Marvel for $12,000. They bought Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Iron Man, the Hulk, and a few Captain America and a few others, Human Torch, some of the things that they never produced. Yeah. And they sort of offered him around to him as a grab bag. Now, Spider-Man beat the Hulk by a few months, correct?
Yes, Spider-Man was on September 14, 1977, and Hulk was, I have the date, let's see here, November 4th, 1977.
Yeah, November 4th. And what a difference in what we got. Now, with the Spider-Man, I found myself smiling at certain moments that I thought were had some fealty to the comics. When he takes pictures of himself as Spider-Man to give to J. Jonah Jameson, I really enjoyed that. His costume, I didn't think was terrible. There's some wonkiness with the mask, but I was surprised that,
fine, to be honest.
Yeah, it looks fine. And I like that they kept fealty to the design of the comics. They could have gone a totally different direction, right? Yeah. And I appreciated from what I saw. Now I think that shot awkwardly sometimes, where we just get Spider-Man running around, he'll just be running and it looks bad. But it looked to me like Nicholas Hammond was in the costume as much as possible, because he was bringing some of that energy that he had as Peter Parker to that role. If I could compare him to any of our modern superheroes, he's the most like Andrew Garfield. He has this. Would you agree?
That's an interesting.
You would disagree. Okay,
I just think. Take. Oh, you continue, and then I'll say how I view him as.
He doesn't play Spider-Man as like a mopey guy or someone who's always down on his luck. He's just sort of like this lovable goofball. I have a clip here that I'm going to play of an example of. Oh, I guess I don't. I thought I did. Sorry, but I had what I thought was a clip of Peter Parker talking, because he has this very sort of like manic delivery, I feel, and he has almost like how would you describe him? Go for it, please.
My main criticism of his performance here, and maybe it's not really his performance, it's the way the character is written, is that he's very uninteresting, disconnected, kind of like he's kind of a bore. He doesn't really do much or contribute much to his own kind of personality. He kind of lacks a personality, in my opinion. Visually, when you were saying, I don't know if you meant this in a visual way, that if he resembled or felt like Andrew Garfield, but I felt that he resembled more of what I considered like that late 70s John Romita Bronze Age Spider-Man, kind of a little bit more zombie, a little bit more developed. I certainly with being older, it's not quite Tobey Maguire, but Tobey Maguire filled that same kind of notion of what the character stood for at that time period. But if you look at like the early 80s Spider-Man cartoons as well, they kind of have the same vibe going on about how the character looks. He kind of looks like him, like Nicholas Hammond in the show, in my opinion.
He's not a total like you could buy that he.
Oh, he's cool. He's cool.
With
like,
yeah. He's cool.
He's a cool Spider-Man. Like he's a cool Peter Parker. Like he's not like he's dressed well. He's not a nerd. He's not like tripping over himself. But he's like a cool guy. you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
I think that's correct. He's like a cool nerd. He would have been like a 70s hipster, maybe. But no, I enjoyed it. Sorry, I wish I had these video clips. It's telling me they can't play them on here. That's really a bummer because these were fun. I wanted to show an example of the special effects of the television show, go ahead.
No, the special effects, and I think this is where the money aspect comes in, is that they blew most of their money, I think, doing these stunts, which they had no other way to do but to do practical stunts. And, there's, for all intents and purposes of what we're talking about, which is a television film from 1977, the wall crawling up the building, the jumping between the buildings, it's pretty passable. It's not great. It's certainly not good by what we consider standards today, but for this, it looks okay. I mean,
you can tell the guy is like miming climbing, even though they're like pulling him up on a rope. They're like, get up here, and he's like, oh,
it's like, I guess
right.
The argument is like, should you even have done the show at all? But they're giving it a good shot.
Yeah.
They do the
banner.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm experimenting with this, and I'm so sorry.
The web aspect is totally strange. He shoots out a web, and a net comes out, which is
so they do very sparingly. I mean, he makes kind of a rope, but it's like, is he shooting a rope out of his deal? Right.
I think he made a rope on the flagpole, which they reused that shot at least.
I was actually, because the show is Spider-Man needs to, first of all, the thing I didn't like about the show is that we talk about the trailer, about the pilot. They layer on too much stuff for one man to take in the first episode, which is something the Incredible Hulk really stayed away from doing, which is that on the Incredible Hulk show, they knew that the idea of a guy turning into a green monster was already a lot to accept. So they wouldn't layer that on with there being like an alien bad guy, right? Yeah. Whereas in the first Spider-Man show, the plot is that there's somebody hypnotizing people to rob banks and then crash their cars into a wall. And then there's this whole subplot of people being hypnotized by radiation or something. And then the lead bad guy, who's like this sort of cult dude, has 3 kung fu guys as his like henchmen.
They come out of nowhere. It's not related to anything.
They're not related to anything. He just has like 3 guys. Like they're like, hey, what's cool? Kung fu's cool. Bring in these guys from Shaw Brothers Studio to come fight Spider-Man.
And they're hypnotized too, because at the end they're like, he's like, hey, it's like, and let's take a selfie,
Yeah. And you're right. He does do that.
He does. He takes a selfie with them at the end to sell it to
absolutely.
the paper.
He sells it for big bucks to Darren's boss from
yes, I was going to say, oh, good catch. You noticed that, huh?
Yeah.
David
Larry
White.
Tate, there you go. Yeah. But yeah, they have a fight scene where...
Did you buy him as Jameson though?
Sure.
I just think he's such a nice guy, It's like
I just thought those scenes were kind of boring. I mean, there's multiple times where he goes to that same office and has the same argument, and then he goes to the villain's lair twice and fights the kung fu guys again on top of a building, which you can tell they filmed it all in one go because he swings across the roof. And I said, that's a pretty cool little stunt. I'm surprised I didn't get a second angle of that. But then he does it exactly again, and then we do see the second angle, and I go, "Oh, I see."
Yeah.
And
I think it's in multiple more episodes.
Which, I mean, that's a badass stunt to swing a guy from one building to another. That's really cool. When he's climbing on the walls, I'm like, that's neat.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's worth noting a couple of things. The origin story, which is depicted here as well. For the most part, it'll kind of trick you into thinking it's pretty faithful. So, Peter Parker is a college student. He lives with his Aunt May, who's seen here. He works in the lab. He is trying to make extra money by being a freelance photographer for the Daily Bugle, which we do see, which is run by J. Jonah Jameson. And I was shocked that Robbie was also there, which was very happy to see as well, because it's not a character it's a character that often gets forgotten or thrown away. And he was thrown out after this movie. After this movie, they threw out Robbie. But he gets bitten by a radioactive spider in the lab and becomes Spider-Man. Now, they're left out one very, very important thing. One, you could say, key aspect to Spider-Man's origin that is conveniently left out of this movie. Did you notice what it was?
No Uncle Ben.
Yeah, no Uncle Ben, and no with great power comes great responsibility, which is like the most important thing about the origin of Spider-Man.
Which just would have been like, if you told me that, I'm like, well, that's compelling television. Let's just do that. Right. Yeah. So that they left it out. Like, I don't know why. He just decides to be Spider-Man because I think he decides to be Spider-Man because he needs to make money.
The money.
Pictures.
Yeah.
And then he wants to like help his new girlfriend out because her dad got ensnared into the hypnotism trap.
Yeah.
His new girlfriend, by the way.
Yeah. I was going to say there's no real love interest. I don't know. Did you really consider that to be a romantic relationship or budding? I just kind of
no, because like I was going to say about Hammond's performance is that I got like a lot of like almost like gay vibes off of him. Is that wrong? Like he has this sort of like upspeak, like, "Hello, I'm Peter Parker. How are you doing?" Like he could have put his voice in a C-3PO.
I did not notice that.
Yeah, and so like I didn't buy that he was going to make it with that gal, who by the way was also in Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh, really?
But yeah, she was in Beverly Hills Cop. She was the lead ingenue in that film. But Lisa Eilbacher, and she was actually a Saudi Arabian actress with oil money. She was like the daughter of an oil baron in Saudi Arabia. Became an actress. Very pretty. Yeah, she has a totally different look in the 80s with like big blonde, hair sprayed up hair. So it looks different than now. But no, I didn't buy this, that Spider-Man had any sort of like sexual drive or urge at all. He just seemed like a very like blank slate guy.
I think that goes to the point that the character has no drive at all. No,
you're right.
Yeah. He is a blank slate. He's like, hey,
what's the difference between him and his lab buddy? They're like the same character. Like they could have delivered the same lines. Like they're just goofy, like humor guys. Yeah,
I don't see any difference, and a lot of the other characters are useless. Aunt May doesn't do anything. Not that Aunt May needs to be a big part of the show, but there should be some reason to have her. And the same with the Daily Bugle people. Right. They play a little bit more integral role, but then it's obsessed with this new character that they create, Captain Barbera, who's like the overbearing, like New York cop detective.
You don't need him.
Why do we need him? And why not use Captain Stacy?
That's exactly what I thought too. It's like not that I need fan service all the time, but like the idea that wouldn't occur to them to just call him Captain Stacy, I didn't. Like, why not? You already have a police character.
Stanley served as a consultant for whatever that means. Maybe he did absolutely nothing. Maybe he never was called once. But you think, like, hey, Stan, we've got a detective character we want. Did you have anybody? Not that we're even going to bother to look, but you can ask this guy who like wrote most of the stories. Do you have a detective character who was like involved with Spider-Man? Oh yeah, there was a guy named George Stacy, and Spider-Man also dated his daughter, and he died fighting, one of the supervillains and all that.
That's exactly. You have everything you need for a television show in that 70s run of this of Spider-Man. You have a lively office culture for him to be in. You have love triangles with him and his friend, and Gwen and Mary Jane. And the fact that you just throw all that out doesn't make any sense. It's all laid up for you on a platter. That's what yeah.
Well, but we're still going through the same. You can ask these questions about a lot of the same shows and movies that are made today. Not that they do it a little bit less, but they'll use the names and they'll change the entire characterizations around and motivations and I don't know, ideas. And you wonder, well, why didn't they just do that? Why didn't they just adapt the source material? Why are you coming up with this nonsense instead?
Yeah, exactly. Like, why bother? You have it all there laid out for you. So yeah, in that way, it was disappointing. And I just thought that overall it was just kind of repetitive and a little bit boring. I haven't watched any of the other episodes. Have you?
No, I've actively avoided this show for a long, long time.
Yeah, I found it to be pretty, and I guess I like Nicholas Hammond. I always feel bad for these actors. It seems like they gave it their all. I'm glad Nicholas Hammond actually got a role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Tarantino film.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that.
He plays the director, Sam Wanamaker, who pep talks Leo in his trailer. Okay. So I don't know if Tarantino is a fan of this, because after he did this show, he didn't really do anything else. Anything, really. Right?
Tarantino seems like he hates superhero content in general.
I don't think he does. I think he used to, because he, in True Romance, he makes the lead character a big comic book fan who works at a comic book store, right? So I don't know if he does, but I think maybe he's turned off by the movies. I don't think that's his bag, So, boy, I had a really great clip of Spider-Man. If I can figure out how to make it work, of Spider-Man climbing around, that I thought was pretty fun, because in addition to just like the sheer stunts, we also get these sort of Nicholas Hammond walking on a green screen, and then he just kind of is like floating over a house. Right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I will say the only other thing I really want to say is that the problem with the entire concept of this show is that, yes, you can make Spider-Man somewhat convincing. You can sort of do as much as you can, but then you're going to be stuck with lousy generic villains for the entire run of the show's existence. You are never going to ever muster up the either ability to create any kind of supervillain like the Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus or the Scorpion or the Lizard. There's no way. It's impossible.
No, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So you're just going to have
and the hypnotist gurus,
I mean, what other villains did they have on the show? I imagine it was probably just bank robbers and like corrupt politicians or something. Now, the Hulk used that to its advantage on that show, right?
The Hulk, you could have done some monster type things, but let me look up. They're all really weird gangster type characters.
Yeah, look that up.
Spider-Man show.
Here, while you do that, I'm going to show everyone kind of an example of, first of all, the hip soundtrack of this hip score.
Oh, it is good. It is good.
It's not bad. I like this unironically, this little song here, but we'll see an example of this, not the stuntman, but the special effects. Here we go. This is him learning he can walk on the walls. Hell yeah, let's go. I mean, that looks like okay. The lighting is just off. I mean,
it's not bad for the time. The thing about it, people were watching these on very small TVs back then.
You're right. It would have been a very small. That doesn't look
quite right.
No, I'm not buying some of those.
Something looks off there.
Yeah, Nicholas Hammond was one of the Von Trapp children in Sound of Music. Really handsome actor, a lot of energy. Go ahead.
The next episode is called The Deadly Dust, which was also released as a two-part film, or a film as the two-part episodes. So upset that the professor has bought a small amount of plutonium onto campus in order to give a class demonstration, 3 university students decide to steal the plutonium and build a bomb in order to illustrate the dangers of nuclear power. So there's one.
Good idea.
The Curse of Rava. Members of a religious cult led by the telekinetic Mandak plan to steal a Rava religious icon from a museum, and in the process frame Mr. Jameson for attempted murder.
Okay.
It's all scientists, mad scientists. There's Night of the Clones. A controversial American scientist has figured out a way to clone human beings, and he creates an evil clone Spider-Man. Oh, there you go.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
At least I don't know when this ties into the clone original Clone Saga. Obviously, the big one was in the 90s, but there's the 70s.
The Jackal Clone Saga that was the precursor.
Yeah. So and then the final episode of the first year was Escort to Danger. While visiting New York City, the daughter of a recently elected pro-democracy Latin American president is kidnapped by those seeking a return of a fascist dictatorship.
All right.
Cool.
That almost sounds like a Stan Lee kind of story, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess like you could have done like Kraven the Hunter, perhaps.
You could have done that.
Put that in, but they don't care because the people making the show did not care.
They didn't care. Yeah. Yeah, and I understand that the show underwent a few changes. Like they changed leadership on it, tried to go a different direction. Like mid-season, it didn't work. It just doesn't appeal to kids who are the lead, the audience. I don't think. I think there's too much. It's too boring for kids. But then it doesn't have enough for adults either. If you had the love triangle, if you had the Norman Osborn as the father of your best friend, like all that stuff is just great. It would work excellently as a television show. That whole run of like Spider-Man from the late 60s to when Gwen Stacy died, it's an excellent television show. Yeah. Right.
Well, I've always thought that Spider-Man would be one of the best serialized television shows if they did it in the style that DC made their Green Arrow and Flash shows on that kind of budget. You could really make it work.
I always thought Daredevil would be the best just because he's a low budget as far as powers go. His costume is pretty safe. He's a lawyer, which is already a tried and true genre in, television. But what you would have, I know, but what you would have to do with a Daredevil, which they kind of did with She-Hulk, to be honest. But I always wanted them to do with Daredevil was you can't make the season of the show one 15-hour-long movie with the same through lines of the plot. You know what I mean? You break it up like 2-episode arcs. maybe it all builds up to the end, but like throw in some different villains, like throw in some different plot lines, let them live and be, you can watch them in chunks, like Law and Order,
That's why I like the CW shows, at least initially, is that's what they did, is that they had the villain of the week, but there was an overarching narrative for the entire season where one major villain was plotting something big. And every once in a while you would go back to that story. But in the interim, other things are happening in people's lives. So other villains are going to come and go. Other problems are going to arise. So it keeps things going. And especially when you had to make 20 something episodes, that's, but now we're obsessed. Our entertainment culture is obsessed with the season being one movie that goes on for 7 episodes, 10 episodes, 12 episodes. And you get episodes where 0 happens and it's just filler because we're getting
100%.
So that's the problem just with television in general, though, these days.
Spider-Man, not our fave.
I was gonna say, let's see, is there anything else? The
director of the pilot was the director of the pilot of Law and Order, by the way. He's a guy with an absolute million credits.
Interesting. And we'll see that same trend with, I think, the Captain America director.
The biggest issue with a lot of these things, not the Hulk, but definitely Captain America and definitely this. And after watching Wonder Woman, it's even more embarrassing. Just like there's almost no production design. You know what I mean? Like,
it's very bland and blah.
Very bland, white rooms. It's just.
I think they blew their budget on the special effects, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they probably did, which is too bad. But you could have had a lot going on here, and there's nothing at all. So I think that the show does. You have a captivating, energetic young performer playing Spider-Man, which helps a lot. But you don't give him anything to play off. You don't give him anything to do, and no real motivation to be Spider-Man.
No. And I liked the hypnotist guru guy. He had some flavor to him. He had some charisma. That's a guy named Thayer David, who I know from, he was on the TV show Dark Shadows. He played.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was on there. Many characters.
He has kind of this like fat, pudgy, like wet mouth, and he just seemed, right? You don't trust him.
Voice. Yeah.
But the only moments I thought of actual sort of filmmaking involved him. Like there's that moment when Peter and his girlfriend walk into the room, and like we get an extreme close up dollying on him that pans back to the room. I'm like, okay, great, thank you for moving the camera. When he's hypnotizing those people in the room, and we get that sort of, it almost looks like the 1984 Ridley Scott ad where it's like moving past their faces and they're being lit up by light. I'm like, okay, thank you for giving me something. Because when people are robbing a bank, flat angle of the side, they walk out of the bank and into a car, and they have like this cool purple smoke. And I go, you guys couldn't have just moved the camera and seen those doors bust open with some smoke. And then, and then we cut to them walking to the car. It just had to be, okay, got it. We're good. Let's go.
Next. Yep. The other thing is like, there's nothing distinctively Spider-Man about this story. That's also that you can cut and paste. You could put Captain America in this movie. Cut, paste. You could put any other character you want. Just put them in there. Wonder Woman, the Wonder Woman movie, you could not cut and paste Spider-Man and put him in there. You could not cut and paste the Hulk or Captain America and put him in there. But this movie, you could put any character you want in here, and they would be able to do it.
Run of the mill. It was really unfortunate because you could have had a great Spider-Man show in the 70s if you really wanted to.
So my grades for these, I would give the movie as a whole, I'd give it a C, and I'd give the connection to the. Is that being generous?
You're so generous. I was looking at your letterboxes and you gave everything 3 stars. I was like,
did not get everything 3 stars. I did not.
I do. I usually do, and I was giving out a lot of 1s, 1.5, and 2s.
Your ratings were. I was surprised your ratings were like very harsh, and I was like,
I didn't hate any of these movies, but there's just a lot of them. There's just they're there, man. I mean, it's like there's not much going on.
What is a C in terms of star ratings for you? Is that a 2 or is that a?
I give everything 3 stars. Like I said, like I don't think I've ever given anything. I give out 5s very, very rarely. Right?
Yeah, I give a 5 if I like really like it. So this is not a 5, but this is a C for me. And for connection to the source material, I would actually give it like a B-. I think everything is there except for the Uncle Ben, and which is again a huge part of it. But like, come on, most of the other surface dress or window dressing is there for the character in terms of the way he looks, the supporting characters, the environment, the origin story. It's all pretty much there except for that integral key component. So
I almost wish that we would have maybe watched a few more of the other episodes if I had. But the problem too with this show is that for whatever reason, it's tied up in some sort of legal hell where you can't watch it, right?
There's no official release.
There's no official release, which is shocking because you would think they would have put some kind of DVD out when Spider-Man the movie came out in 2002 or something, but they didn't even bother with that, right? I mean, I'm looking here. Go ahead.
I wonder who owns it. I mean, Columbia must have some,
right?
But then it's probably tied up with the Marvel, whatever Marvel Disney stuff is out there now,
But that they haven't thrown it onto Disney Plus just to have something going on. So I see this little publicity photo here, and we don't see any of these characters in the pilot.
No,
right? This looks like Gloria Grant on the.
But it's not though.
It's not. Oh,
it's not.
It's not Betty Brant.
No. Well, Gloria Grant is the African American secretary at the Bugle, so that would be a good guess. But her name is Rita Conway.
I almost feel like that was somebody that they had that I've read about in a comic. Like she was in the Spectacular Spider-Man run or something.
I don't know. When you click on her name on Wikipedia, it goes to the Glory Grant page, but I don't recall her ever being named that.
Is the old guy the recast Jameson then?
Yeah, that's the recast Jameson. And then the Ellen Bry, the other girl, is somebody named Julie Masters, who came on in season 2. According to this.
Oh, I thought there was only one season.
I remember from St. Elsewhere, but I don't know what her character's original character created.
Yeah, this is a Saturday morning TV show, but boring. So
yeah, I mean, it probably would have been. They could have made it a little bit better for a Saturday morning audience, but
but this is a cartoon show plot, right? I mean, it's
yeah, for sure. It's nothing more sophisticated than actually, I think you could probably say the plots on the Shazam Saturday morning TV show with real people were probably more complicated than this.
The Shazam ISIS Hour, which we didn't talk about. I know that. But here's the weird thing that I thought.
That's a decent show. It's a watchable show.
We're going to talk about the Hulk here. But I remember when the Hulk came out, obviously it was more popular, but to accompany the popularity, Marvel put out like a black and white magazine to sort of capitalize on the adult fans of the Hulk show. I remember seeing on the Stripe headline or, on some Marvel comics in the late 70s, like, don't forget to watch The Incredible Hulk on TV.
Marvel's TV sensation.
Marvel's TV sensation, The Incredible Hulk. Exactly. Yep. I wish I had more like concurrent fan reaction at the time. Like, would they have just been slopping this up as like at least they got something? Or was it just muted for everyone? Where the fans like, wow, cool.
From reading articles and stuff, it sounds like it was very mixed and I don't think people were satisfied. I don't think loyal comic book readers were satisfied with what they got here. Yeah, I know it's always like you'll take whatever you can get, but if it's so bad and it's so divorced from the source material, then what's the point?
What's the point?
That's how That's how I feel now, at least about what's coming out.
Like, what a wasted opportunity. We beat up on Spider-Man enough.
What would you rate this then? You thought I was too generous then?
D. I don't know. D? I mean, I didn't. Oh,
man. That's harsh. It's watchable.
Oh God, I guess. I mean, like the meteorology channel is watchable. I don't know, I don't know.
Some of the other ones some of the other movies we're going to be talking about, I don't know if they're so watchable. So
okay. Have we beat up on Spider-Man enough? Can we beat up on somebody else called Captain America?